Hey, this is Nikki. Welcome to Voice and Value. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and hit the like button and leave a comment down below. Today, I want to talk about something that we've all experienced in one form or another, and that's the silent treatment. The silent treatment is where one partner deliberately withdraws communication or ignores the other one. It can have both short term and long term effects on a relationship. Its effectiveness and ineffectiveness depend largely on how it's used and in what context, whether we've given it, received it, or just witnessed it. It's one of those social dynamics that's almost universally understood, but we rarely discuss it in depth. Well, we're going to do that today. Because a lot of times we think of the silent treatment as a passive aggressive gesture or a way to punish someone for a perceived wrongdoing. But is that all that it is? Or does it have a deeper psychological root and consequences? First, let's define what we mean by silent treatment. At its core, it's a form of nonverbal communication in which one person deliberately ignores or refuses to speak to another. It's often used as a response to conflict, anger, or hurt feelings. It can last anywhere from a few minutes to days or even longer in some cases. We might think of it as a timeout for adults, but unlike a child who may simply need a break to calm down, the adult version can carry heavy emotional weight. Why do we give the silent treatment? The silent treatment usually happens in response to feelings of frustration, betrayal, or a misunderstanding. It's a way of saying, I'm hurt and I don't know how to express it. So I'm going to withhold communication as a form of protection. This can happen in many different relationships. It can happen between friends, romantic partners, family members, or even coworkers. One reason we might resort to this kind of strategy is to avoid confrontation. Let's face it, difficult conversations can be very uncomfortable. Sometimes it's easier to just shut down and retreat into silence rather than risk saying something we might later regret. Or we might be trying to teach the other person a lesson by withholding attention, affection, or validation. In a way, the silent treatment can feel like a power move, an attempt to control the situation by manipulating the flow of communication. But of course, this rarely works as intended. The silent treatment can be effective when we use it as a temporary space to calm down. Sometimes a person may use a silent treatment as a way to cool down and avoid escalating a heated argument. Taking a break can both help our partners process their emotions and gain clarity, just reducing the risk of saying something hurtful in the heat of the moment. It's also effective when it's non confrontational. For people who struggle with direct confrontation or have trouble expressing their feelings verbally, withdrawing temporarily may seem like an intense way to avoid conflict. It can basically serve as a form of self protection. When one partner uses the silent treatment, it may signal to the other that something is wrong, prompting reflection and hopefully leading to a resolution. This can, in some cases, encourage a partner to address the issue because being silent often signals discontentment. In relationships where one partner is being overly aggressive or disrespectful, using a silent treatment can be a way to establish a boundary or pause the interaction. It's an effective way of signaling that a certain behavior is unacceptable. While the silent treatment may offer a temporary sense of relief or control, it's important to recognize that it can have serious emotional consequences as well. For one, it creates distance between people. The person on the receiving end of the silence can feel rejected, unimportant, or sadly unloved. They may spiral into self-doubt, wondering what went wrong or what they did to deserve the cold shoulder. This can end up being an erosion of trust and communication, which are vital parts of any healthy relationship. What I'm trying to say is silence doesn't necessarily solve the underlying issue. In fact, it can actually make things worse. Without an open dialogue, misunderstandings persist, resentments build up, and the conflict that initiated the silence remains unresolved. The problem simply lingers, unresolved and festering. There's also the emotional toll on the person delivering the silent treatment. While it may seem like a way to express anger or frustration, keeping someone else at arm's length emotionally can create a sense of isolation. Over time, it can contribute to the breakdown of empathy and connection. We're all wired for connection. When we cut someone off entirely, we lose the opportunity to heal, to rebuild, or even to just grow in the relationship. Giving someone the silent treatment is almost always ineffective. It's ineffective when it escalates conflict instead of de escalating, when there's a total lack of communication, because we know healthy communication is key. It's ineffective when it damages trust and emotional intimacy. This happens when it's used infrequently or in a manipulative way. It's also ineffective when there's an avoidance of responsibility. That's when a silent partner might be using silence to avoid having to apologize, explain themselves, or take ownership of their behavior. And finally, the silent treatment is ineffective and harmful when it creates power imbalances. Over time, this can contribute to emotional manipulation, which can be very toxic. So, what can we do when we're upset or hurt? The answer is simple, but it's not always easy. Communicate. It's completely natural to need space when emotions are running high, and sometimes silence can be an important tool for personal reflection. But silence shouldn't be a weapon. Instead of shutting down completely, take a moment to collect your thoughts. Express what you're feeling with honesty, even if it's uncomfortable. A phrase like, I'm really upset right now and I need a little time to process, can go a long way in diffusing tension and creating space for healthy dialogue. If you're one on the receiving end of the silent treatment, it's important not to internalize it. Don't assume that the silence is about you personally. Sometimes it's more about the other person needing time to figure out what they're feeling. It's also essential to set boundaries. If silence becomes a habitual tool for manipulation or avoidance, it's worth addressing. Address it head on with the other person, ideally when both parties are calm. Silence speaks, but so should we. In the end, the silent treatment is a complicated and often harmful way of dealing with emotions. It can feel powerful in the short term, but it ultimately leads to disconnection, misunderstanding, and more unresolved hurt. To build healthier relationships, we need to move past silence and into open communication. Silence may speak volumes, but the words we use, spoken with honesty, respect, and empathy, have the power to heal and bridge gaps instead of driving us further apart. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.